we were in the middle of the Shulchan Aruch on Aleph, and we were just about to talk about the examples of building a wall and building a chatzer and what the Mishnah Berurah have to say about these cases, which seem to be problematic on the surface. They seem to be not such simple cases to just permit um, the building of these on Shabbos, allowing your worker to build them on Shabbos, even though the arrangement is fine. You're not forcing them to work on Shabbos. Remember, we're talking about an arrangement that is called kablanus. It's called a contractor, and I want the job done. I'm not forcing it to get done over Shabbos. I want it to be done in let's say 3-4 months from now, and it's doable without having to work on Shabbos. So then, if they choose to work on Shabbos, Me'ikar Hadin, it's not a problem. Now the question again becomes a Maris Ayin issue. Does this arrangement look funny when people walk by and they say, "Wow, look at that person working for on the Jews' house, on the Jews' courtyard, and that's interesting." And they might be thought of as schirei yom, as hourly workers. This is the problem. So now let's just
excuse me, Rav.
Yeah, go ahead, Simeon.
We were just talking about it before the shir began, and it's something that I'm learning now, touching on certain aspects of it. I want to try to understand: is Maris Ayin limited to the public domain, or if you are Mechalel Shabbos within your home where people can't see it, do you have the Maris Ayin issue operating?
So no, the Talmud says that the Chadrei. So depends on the kind of violation. When Chazal make a decree that Maris Ayin comes into play, which really it's a little bit hard to sometimes pin down when is Maris Ayin a functional thing and when is it not, because sometimes it seems like you could do something and it can maybe look a certain way to people, but it's permissible, and we might get the wrong idea. But generally, we say when Maris Ayin is something that Chazal were concerned about in a certain situation, if it's a concern that relates to an Isser D'Oraisa, the general rule is that prohibition extends even in the privacy of your own home. When the Maris Ayin issue relates or stems from something that may have been rabbinic, then B'chadrei Chadarim it's mutter. When then the Maris Ayin concern goes away when you're not surrounded by others. Again, the types of cases in which Maris Ayin is a problem, I don't have a full list on it. I don't want to say it's random, though. To me, it seems that way because I'm not well versed enough. It probably seems like it's random. I can recall certain times on for just learning Gemara and Maris Ayin comes up. It's not frequently, but that's the rule. It's that B'chadrei Chadarim, the Gemara says it's mutter, and I think that Chazal interpret that to mean that when it comes to an issue that would have been rabbinic in nature, then it's okay. If it's D'Oraisa in nature, then there is still that decree, meaning that it's prohibited, sticks around even when nobody's around. It becomes part of the canon of law that Chazal have established. I think that's the best I can do to answer your question. I would need to do a little bit more research on the other types of examples that Gemara uses or gives or decrees where Maris Ayin is an issue. Again, Maris Ayin here is at worst, we're talking about a rabbinic prohibition. It's an extension off of some other prohibition.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we were up to Hey in the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, Hey builds off of the following comment: Laficha chaposek ima'eno Yehudi libnos lo chatzero okoslo likto lo sadeu. If the malacha is in the Medina or it's in the Tchum, meaning Jews, as Simeon has alluded to, another Jew could see what's going on, then it is prohibited. Why? So this is really key, by the way. The Shulchan Aruch cites a reason. And of course, by giving a reason, you could say, well, what if the reason doesn't exist? Does the prohibition go away? Because those that see won't know what the arrangement is. That really it's a permissible arrangement. Look at Hey. Lefichach, Ritzon Alomar, the Stam Mechubar, Have Ki'ilu Yadua, Umeforsemes Shehi Shel Yisrael. So as I was doing more research this week and more studying and reading, it became clear that when it is when we are talking about a job that is related to things that are mechubar lakarka, property, they are attached to the ground. So you're talking about a wall, a chatzer, a courtyard. These things, you say, well, well, I can come up with a scenario where it is mechubar, but even though it's in the city, no one really goes there. I mean, maybe you could pass by. It's very unlikely. Chazal basically made this Maris Ayin. It seems the way that the Rishonim explain things. That the Maris Ayin issue extends no matter what the case of Karka is, so long as it is in the Techum, that a Jew in theory could go there. Why? Because it's Ke'ilu Yadua Umefursemes Shehi Shel Yisrael. Because it is, when it is a piece of property, it's a piece of land, that's out there. That's out there, and people know oftentimes who the owners are of property. The information is out there, technically. You can go to City Hall even today, if you're so interested, and you could find out who owns each property in a particular location. I don't know if that's actually true, by the way. I don't know if is that secret information, or you could actually go to City Hall and actually find out. I'm not sure. Maybe Hinda would know this.
Yeah, it's public information, but excuse me. But in many cases, the property is owned by an LLC.
It's not clear who owns it. Yeah.
Right. It may be an individual owner.
Right.
It may be that the person himself, the Jew, owns the property, but he owns it through an LLC. So,
right.
But the information on who owns it is totally public.
Right. And I guess the idea being here that even if it is an LLC, at some point people may also just know because they know from being exposed to the business, whatever, if it's a business or if it's just they know they see who goes in and out. Especially think back, in the small Jewish shtetls, they would have probably, people know where everybody lives. Okay, Chatzera o Koslo. Here it gets a little interesting now. Okay, Vafilovim who omeid b'makom she'en yadua shu shelo gam kenos. Even if people, this is like what Hinda's saying, almost like it's an LLC, they don't even know, or it's standing in a place, it's the corner of the town, it's not the Jewish neighborhood, so nobody's walking. You could walk there on Shabbos, but nobody's walking there on Shabbos, and they're not even going there on the weekdays for the most part. It's still prohibited. Why? Maybe the neighbors will find out, though, that it is his property, or it's her property, and they will suspect. They'll say, I heard that there was work going on there on Shabbos. And they'll say that the workers, he must have hired them as schirei yom. He hired them for the day. It was not an arrangement of kabbalah, so he paid them specifically for work to be done on Shabbos. This is what the Magen Avraham explains as to why it's still a problem, even if it's b'mokom she'ein yadua shehu shelo, even if it's a place where they probably would not be able to easily identify that it was owned by a Jew. But there is a chashash that would be it would be possible. I want to point out here, and we'll talk about this more in a second. That the Sharat Tziyun, which is also written by the Mishnah Berurah, by the Chafetz Chaim, he writes here in the bottom, Sfirale, the Machmerinan, you can see where I'm pointing at the very bottom of the page. The Machmerinan afilu im hamalocha eina mifursemes. Let me just zoom in here a little bit. even if the malacha is not so public, hainu dafka b'mechubar, but it is still a situation of property. But it's in some hole in the corner of the city that no one would ever really know, and it's an LLC, and it's, you get everything going to protect who owns it. It's still a problem. Umishum lo plug. Now this to me makes a lot of sense, because Chazal, when they made this, according to this approach about the Maris Ayin issue, it was a low plug. It's not, you can't start differentiating. When it comes to property, as long as it's in the tchum, then we say it's problematic, and we can't start splitting hairs because everybody's going to come with their questions, and it's going to be a gray area. And so oftentimes Chazal will it's a low plug. But the reason you made the gzeira doesn't apply to me. I'm sorry, we made the decree, we made the law. This happens even in American law sometimes. There's a law that's really annoying, and like, I know why they made the law, but come on, this is not why they made the law, and it's affecting my life. Same thing here. It's not uncommon because law doesn't want to leave sometimes things open for interpretation, or for you're going to leave it to people to figure out gray areas. So Masha Enkain, when it comes to talush, he's going to talk about the case of talush in a moment, of things that are movables. They're detached from the ground. There, we'll say if it's completely in the view of the public. Let's say you own a boat and it's right on the harbor, it's at the dock, and everybody knows it's Klinger's boat, and that's how you walk to shul, right by that area. Even though a boat is not mechubar lakarka, it's not attached to the ground, it's talush. Nevertheless, that's going to be problematic. But if it's talush and it's in the privacy of some area, for example, I keep going back to this one, the dry cleaning example, my shirt, my suit, that's fine. But when it comes to mechubar, it appears that while we can start fiddling around with, well, even if they don't know, it may be that the easiest way to explain why every case of mechubar is problematic is because it's a low plug. Because we don't differentiate on the cases when it comes to property. Okay, I actually, from a legal perspective, that's an easier way out of explaining some of the cases where you could have really good questions as to why this is included. So
yeah, if the Takanas D'Rabbanan is a matter of mechubar, and now you're extending it to something that's talush, and this is all midrabanan, not midaraisa, aren't you putting a gezerah on a gezerah here?
In terms of they're saying that all mechubar is problematic?
Well, I understand mechubar, and now you're extending it to talush. I understand the concept. You're making a gezerah, you might as well make a gezerah. But even if it's behind a wall and it can't readily be seen, and now you're extending it even further and further with.
Right. I think that the way you would look at this from a technical perspective, Simeon, is that it's all one gezerah, but they had two tracks of the gezerah, one being talush and one being mechubar. And the mechubar, there's nothing to talk about, and by talush, they're willing to give you, let's say, more guidance as to what, and we'll talk about this when we get to Gimel, what constitutes a problem and what is permissible. That's how I would think about it.
Okay.
Zion. Okay. Liktzor lo sadehu. This is an interesting example. Liktzor lo sadehu. So even though we normally say, we talked about this, a field oftentimes has a sharecropper arrangement, which is certainly permissible because the non-Jew is actually taking some of the profits that are made that day. And so, yeah, the Jew will get some too, but the person is clearly working for their own benefit. It's like the hairstylist. Yes, some's going to go to the owner of the business, but the more I work, the more I make. that is the best type of incentive for the non-Jew because they're really working for themselves, or at least they are. They have enough incentive to push themselves, and not just doing it to keep their job and make extra profit for the Jew. So if it is a case where you actually have a sharecrop arrangement, kemo shekasav v'simin reish mem gimel sif aleph mikol makom aser deshanish hasam dekashiyachkeru hadavar. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, sorry. So if, let's say, you have a kablonis arrangement, but people are going to think it's an aris arrangement, so what's the problem? Maker adin kablonis is okay. I told you I pay you for a job. You do the job. You want to do it on Shabbos. You want to do it on Sunday. It doesn't matter in a field. The corn doesn't just grow the next day. If you picked it on Shabbos, that on Sunday I'll get extra corn. It's not how it works. So it doesn't matter. So this should be permissible. Why is this included in the list of things that are prohibited? He says, nevertheless, it's prohibited because over there, when people look into the matter, they'll see the reason it was permissible there was because they'll see that the non-Jew actually took 50% of the fruit that was picked on Shabbos, or it was harvested, the grain that was harvested on Shabbos. But here, when they're looking at the time of the harvesting, they'll say, hey, the guy never takes it. He goes on Shabbos, he cuts it, he leaves it in bundles, and the Jew, takes everything. They're looking into the matter. So yadu limafreya. So they'll looking back, they say, hey, on Sunday the Jew gets everything. They'll say lav aris haya. He wasn't a sharecropper. I know you're all going to roll your eyes at this. I know. And they're going to suspect limafreya retroactively he was a daily worker, paid by the day. Because it's common. It is common. Some people do hire somebody to pick the fruit or to harvest the field by hiring people for the day. It's not uncommon. Even if the normal practice of a city is liskor bekiboles, is to have a kiboles arrangement, to have a contractor arrangement. Das Hataz, the Taz believes we should be machmir. We should tell the non-Jew, please don't do this on Shabbos and Yontif. You're contracted to do it, just don't do it on Shabbos. The kol shekain, this is a case I really want to spend some time on last few minutes we have today and next week, probably the whole next week. The kol shekain bebinyan bias. When it comes to building a house, so I would add to you contract somebody to build an extension to your house. The akati yachshaduhu b'schir yom. They'll suspect that that the workers that are there are paid by the day. Shagam zehu regilus, because that's also common. V'yesh mekilin bazeh. Some are lenient by this case of the house. Kishamina kol ha'ir hu b'kibolas. When the whole city contract somebody to build a house. That's the normal arrangement. How do we define kiboles, though? This is actually also critical. The kiboles hu dafka kishakol hamalacha hu bekiboles. That's when the whole job is done under, you contract out the whole job. Le'afuke, not including what case? Im rak ha'adricha levado hu kadlon. I don't know what the word adrichal is. I had to look this up. I'll be impressed if anybody gets it, okay?
Architect.
Oh, excellent. The architect, excellent. The adrichal is an architect. So I would say that architect / contractor for our purposes here. Livadohu kablan, he's the only contracted person. Vishar hamesayim, the other workers, because the contractor doesn't build it. You ever had it worked on in your house, that's how it works. Derech l'socham nefamim liyom, or I would say even sometimes by the hour, they're paid by the day or the hour. Va'afilu im hu scharam, hakol bekablonos, even if so since sometimes the workers get paid by the day, or let's say by the hour, even if you pay the workers in a kablonos fashion, right? So not just the architect, but the workers, Gam Kain also, it's still problematic. And he says, look at the Be'er Halacha Shebi'arnu, the Basada Yesh Lismoch al Divrei B'Makom Hefseid. So when it comes to a field, there is, when we're talking about a great loss, let's say, because on Sunday there's going to be a tornado in the forecast. And so turns out the guy wants to be super nice, and he on his own decides, he doesn't have to do it on Saturday, but he turns out to be nice. I don't have to turn him away when he comes to my field on Saturday, when he knows that there's a tornado coming in the forecast. I guess so you could say it's a big hefsed if he doesn't pick it. Or we're worried that the animals will come if he, are too early, and they're gonna on Saturday they might come to destroy the crop or part of it. So he comes, whatever. There's a case of hefsed, then it is permissible in the field. But when it comes to a bias, questionable whether you can be makel on this. The huneged das kama poskim, because many poskim think this is problematic, and so he says, look at the Sharei Tshuva. In the name of the Noah. We're going to look next week at the Be'er Halacha. I want to just say make 2 points. One point is the following. The most famous Rishon who was lenient on this question was Rabbeinu Tam, who explicitly permitted this. That if you have a house that needs work and you have a kablonos arrangement to build your house or to extend your house, Rabbeinu Tam writes in quoted in Tosfos is saying this is permissible. Now, what is interesting, and many of the Rishonim who disagreed with Tosfos' logic that should be permissible, it's really a question of how you apply the law here. Tosfos thought the application here is that if it's the kablonos, it's okay. Everyone will know that it's kablonos. You don't have to worry that people are going to think that there is schira yom, because A, that's normal. Normally, you use a contractor. That's certainly the case in our day and age. And I guess the chashad, the fear wasn't there. In his opinion, many Rishonim disagreed with him. Many, Kimat everyone else disagreed with him, and they all cite the fact that when Rabbeinu Tam built his own house, he told the workers not to come on Shabbos. So Rabbeinu Tam got caught in his own psak. He said it was mutter, but they cite, and I don't know if I don't know when he built his house or he did some work on his house, but he apparently told his own some of the Rishonim claim that the story goes that he told his own contractors not to come on Shabbos, and they all cite that as his retraction of his position about permissibility of houses being built on Shabbos if you contract a non-Jew. The other thing that I'll say, with the minute we have left, is I had asked Rabbi Weir, what about today? When today you hire a contractor, not even an architect. Maybe they're an architect, but you hire the contractor, and the contractor takes care of everything. They hire all those workers who come to work in your house. It's not you. You as the Mishnah Berurah, as the Be'er Halacha is going to put it, you kind of just stay back. You're like, whatever you do what you do. So I said, what in our day, it's virtually 100% of buildings are built in such a fashion where you hire a contractor and the contractor takes care of the workers and hires the workers. So we're going to read this Be'er Halacha, but we'll see a different understanding of the Ran, who thinks that it's prohibited not because of Marisayim, but because of a different issue. And the Shulchan Aruch, though, said it depends upon if people think that it's prohibited, because they'll think it's a schir yom, but no one's going to have that fear today with regards to a building. Virtually all buildings, he wrote to me, are through contractors. Me'ikar Hadin, he felt that it would be permitted as long as the contractor has more than enough time to finish the job without having to have the work done on Shabbos. But then he wrote to me, he's like, I don't know what, if you asked a posek, he obviously doesn't think of himself as a posek, would tell you, they would tell you whether or not there is any kind of clear minhag on this issue. Meaning that maybe by the letter of the law, given the facts today, this should be permissible. Though I would suspect that people probably tell their contractors, and the rabbis would probably tell them to tell their contractors not to do the work on Shabbos. We will talk about why there may be reason to think that way, though certainly if you're simply following the psak of the Shulchan Aruch, there may be room to say that would be permissible today. I'm going to stop because davening is about to begin, and I wish